Alrighty, so today we're gonna do the season preview of DC United, and it just feels like for DC, they're in a very weird conundrum right now, where they've just got a new sporting director on their team, and while they have definitely made some move this offseason, it feels like most of the move that they made this offseason has been kind of underwhelming, and considering the fact that other teams are around them, and especially some of those teams that are fighting for playoff contention around them, got a whole lot better. Yeah, it just feels like they're in a conundrum of I can't tell, are they rebuilding for the future, or are they just kind of building pieces and hope that that's enough for them to compete with playoffs in the Eastern Conference? And mind you, like I said, other teams that are going to be kind of their direct rival for those last couple of playoff spot. And you notice I said last couple of playoff spot because we probably know what exactly the top six is going to look like in the Eastern Conference. I think there's probably maybe three spots that are still a big question in terms of who, of course, will get those. But especially with the way that all those teams around them are going to fight for those last couple of spots gone better. Again, I don't know if this team might have done enough to consider themselves a playoff contention. But that being said, last season they finished with a 10-10-14 record and finished with 40 points. And if there's one team that had a very predictable season, it's DC United last season. I mean, we knew last season with Wayne Rooney, they were kind of in this similar situation where they're kind of going with a boom and bust kind of period where all the pieces that they signed last offseason is clearly catering toward Wayne Rooney, and that it feels like this is going to either be a good thing or it could be a thing that could go terribly wrong if those players did not perform. And we kind of saw a both of that last season. There were times where it definitely hit a boom period, and then there's time where it definitely kind of bust out, and it's unsurprising as a result of that they finished with a very mediocre and inconsistent kind of record like what we saw. Now, their last playoff appearance, they haven't made the playoffs for a while now. I mean, 2019 was the last time that they made it to the playoffs, and it's even longer since they last win a playoff round. 2015 is the last time they won a playoff round. And consider this is one of the most historic franchise in MLS, and this is a team that is considered to be the first ever dynasty in MLS. The fact that they have not won a playoff round in almost a decade now just shows you the mismanagement that is going on with DC, and how much that they, along with the Chicago Fire and even the LA Galaxy, have just been falling from the early days of being considered to be the top tier franchise in MLS history. But as I said, in terms of MLS Cup, as I mentioned, they really are the first dynasty in MLS history because they dominate MLS really from the get go. They won back to back title to start the MLS league itself with a MLS Cup in '96 and '97, and then they won another one in '99 before winning the last MLS Cup in their franchise history in 2004. Now, looking at some of the transfer, and this is where I talk about how some of these signings are very underwhelming. Though I think the biggest name out there is got to be getting Aaron Herrera from Montreal. I thought he did relatively well during his time with Montreal, and it's not surprised because ever since he left RSL, I thought he was one of the best defender and at least one of the best fullbacks in the league. And I think of them getting Aaron Herrera in replacement of Juan that they sent the other way to Montreal. That feels like it's an instant upgrade. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Juan, but he's a very one-dimensional kind of player. He only uses speed in terms being the key of the game, but when it comes to crossing the ball into the box, yeah, you better believe he is not very good at it. And Aaron Herrera gives that dynamic to this team that will be an instant upgrade in terms of their fullback situation. In fact, I think their fullbacks they have definitely upgraded this off season. They also got another fullback in Ethan Double from Seattle, and we'll see whether if he's going to get more minutes considering he didn't really get too much minutes from that Sounders team. They also took Garrison Tubb out of Atlanta United. I already mentioned before with Atlanta of this very weird situation where Garrison Tubb was signed as a homegrown for Atlanta, and then 1 week later, Atlanta basically said he's not good enough. He's going to be transferred to another team. So it looks like DC, of course, were the team to pick him up, and we'll see how he's going to do. I guarantee you, every time if he gets to play for this DC team face against Atlanta United, he's going to have a vendetta over against Atlanta, especially that has to be pretty frustrating and also heartbreaking in a sense where you get the chance to play for your homegrown team, and then literally a week later, the team basically said, "No, we don't want you anymore. We want to sell you to somewhere else." So yeah, I won't be surprised if Garrison Tubb is going to get minutes for this DC team and it's against Atlanta United. Don't be surprised he's going to probably have his best performance because he's definitely going to have a personal vendetta against that team. They also recently signed Meti Patol, the Finnish midfielder, and I've heard that they are making him a designated player, which again, for a guy that is kind of a little bit unknown, I'm interested to see how this, of course, will work. And I think he's going to be a starter if they are going to pencil him as a designated player. I already mentioned Finn Double Air, but they also got Jared Stroud from St. Louis. This is also a very underrated signing. Again, they gotten much better in terms of the fullback position. Jared Stroud was really good last year with St. Louis City, and I think that's going to bring that experience to this DC team. But they also got two center back in Lucas Bartlett and Christopher McVeigh. Both of them are kind of a little underwhelming. I didn't think Bartlett had played well with St. Louis and really kind of lost his job before. Or actually, he didn't lose his job. He was more of a depth pieces for that St. Louis City team, and the same goes for Christopher McVeigh, a guy that is more of a depth piece for that Inter Miami defense that was very bad last season, and it's still very bad to this day. Now, in terms of player that is no longer here, they definitely shred a good amount of their roster. They don't have Chris Durkin anymore. He, of course, went to St. Louis, and that, of course, was part of the Jared Trout and Lucas Bartlett trade. They also don't have Taxi Funtos anymore, although good riddance on that part. Donovan Pines also no longer with this team. Jose Fajardo, Andy Nahar, Eric Davis, Derek Williams, who went to Atlanta United. Juan, of course, went to Montreal as part of the Aaron Herrera trade. And then Victor Paulson, no longer with this team. Christian Fletcher, Jacob Green, Yamil Assad, Brendan Hines Ike, Ravel Morinson, Eric Hurtado, and Guso Sumok also no longer with this DC United team. Now, when you look at their preseason schedule, so DC were part of a team that also went to Saudi Arabia that participated in these games in Saudi Arabia along with Inter Miami. I mean, I guarantee a lot of people don't realize that of course was the case, and it was kind of weird the fact that they decided to go to Saudi Arabia to do some of their preseason game. But they did win their first game 6-0 against Sudan before going 1-1 to Al Wahda FC. They did lose 3-1 to Al Hilal in that game before on February 9th. They're going to play one more game in Saudi Arabia against Al Ittifaq FC. Now, looking at their first 10 game of the season to start off, it's a pretty tough game to start off their season. They're going to be playing against the New England Revolution before they're going to go on the road to play against the Portland Timbers, and then they go on the road to play against FC Cincinnati. So again, already three really tough game to start, and if it isn't tough enough, they get to play against Messi and France after that, and I won't be surprised on that game. That's going to be a sold out crowd at Ali Field. Then they play against St. Louis on the road before playing Montreal at home. Then they play the defending MLS Cup champion Columbus before returning home to play against Orlando City. Then they go on the road to play against NYCFC, and then they play at home against the Seattle Sounders. So again, there are some really tough teams that they're going to be playing straight off the back. But when you look at the post Leeds Cup, they do start their first game after Leeds Cup against FC Dallas, but then they go on the road to face against Toronto and the Chicago Fire. Then they face NYCFC at home before going on the road to play against the Philadelphia Union. They do play Columbus after that before going on the road to play against Nashville and New England, and then they finish off the season on decision day against Charlotte FC. And depending on where DC is in the standings, that could be a matchup that could maybe depend on playoff contention. I mean, DC has involved in the playoff race at least on decision day for the past couple of season, but unfortunately, it feels like every single time that they're involved in that, they get on the wrong end of the stick. So we'll see whether that's going to be the case again, especially if that's going to be a matchup between two teams that could be teams that I've said before how there's a couple of spots left that I think are still kind of an unknown when you look at the East that is very stacked this season, and both of those teams could be those teams that might be fighting for those couples of last spot in the Eastern Conference playoff race. Now, when you look at the strength of this team, I actually forgot to write fullback in this team, especially the right fullbacks. They have really a lot of depth in terms of that spot. But I'm also gonna go with the striker duo of Christian Benteke and Ted Kutibietro, who did really well last season. I think both of those guys are going to be a dynamic duo in that number 9 position. But the weakness of this team is still going to be the back line and the midfield. The back line has always been an issue for DC for the past couple of seasons, and this year again they made some underwhelming move. I already mentioned with them getting the two center back in Lucas Bartlett and Christopher McVeigh. I don't think both of those guys are going to fix the issue of the back line, or you could even say that both of them should be started for this team, considered both of them aren't really considered be starting quality center back in MLS. And then when you look at the midfield, I mean, they still have Russell Canals there, who he has had a couple of mediocre season, and then of course that if they are going to slot in Matti Patolo, as I think that he's going to be, there's a lot I know about him, and that I don't really know a lot about whether if he's can deliver for this DC team in the midfield. And then also not to mention, they still have Mateus Click in this team. And while I said that Mateus Click is one of the more underrated deep line playmaker in this DC team, he's now going to be 34 heading into this season. So he's definitely getting up to that age, and you don't know if he's going to guarantee another great season like he did last year. And then we talk about the number 10 position, and this is where I think the other weakness I'll say about this team is the depth of this team. They don't really have a lot of quality depth, but they basically have no depth in terms of that number 10 position right now. Like the only number 10 of this team is Perini, and Perini kind of had a relatively underwhelming season last year as well, and you don't know if he's going to be the main playmaker or if he's going to figure things out heading into this season. So again, there's a lot of question and a lot of weakness for this DC team, which is why, as much as my expectation is that this team is going to be in playoff contention, I don't know. I mean, when you look at other teams that is going to fight for those last couple of spots, or those teams that they're going to be considered to be direct rival to fight for those last couple of spots, they got much better heading into this season. And with the way that DC, they have at least tried to make some signing, but these signing doesn't feel like it's going to progress to this team to compete for playoffs and actually make the playoffs for the first time since 2019. It just feels like it's going to be another mediocre season for this DC United team, and that's kind of frustrated if you're a DC fan, because they kind of got the wish finally of getting rid of some of their front office member, especially their GM. But the new one that they step in makes a lot of underwhelming signing, and it just feels like this team is probably going to have another mediocre season, very similar to last season, and I would say that's even worse than well, I wouldn't say even worse, but more like almost exactly worse as a team that is finishing dead last in your respective conference, because you're going to be stuck in this mediocrity wheel where you might be good enough to not be the worst team in the league, but you're not good enough in terms of competing for those playoff contention. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for the season preview of DC United. As always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the season preview? If you're a DC fan, what do you think is the strength and weakness, and also the expectation is for this team heading into this upcoming season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.